Ciao, everyone, and welcome back to Experience Italy with Friends. We're excited to kick off 2025 and the second season of our podcast. If you've been following our story, you're aware that we've been on a journey since last September to find a place to call home and begin our new life here in Italy. This episode is dedicated to our third and final trial location in Tuscany, the beautiful hilltop medieval village of Castiglion Fiorentino. This area of Tuscany was relatively new for us, and it was fun to spend a month exploring this charming village and the neighboring towns of Arezzo and Cortona during the holiday season. We can't wait to tell you all about it, so let's get started. Andiamo! Experience Italy with Friends is a travel and lifestyle podcast where we will explore our favorite destinations and hidden gems, share key travel tips and cultural insights, and provide real-time updates about our move to this remarkable country. Join me, Tanya Razzo, an Italian travel expert and founder of Amici Vacations, and my Italian husband and producer, Davide Razzo, on a journey that is sure to inspire you and prepare you to create immersive and authentic experiences of your own in the beautiful country of Italy. Hello again, everyone, and Happy New Year to all of our amici. I'm your host, Tanya, and I'm here with my husband, co-host, and producer, Davide.
Ciao a tutti e buon anno.
We're back after a bit of an extended break over the holidays, and we're energized and excited to kick off another season with you. Or, I should say, I'm feeling energized. How about you, Davide? Are you ready to dive into another season?
Yes, andiamo forza.
And in English?
Come on, let's go. Let's do it.
Okay, let's get started. So we typically start each episode with a quick update about our lives, but since it will ruin the surprise of where we ultimately chose to be our home, we're going to save it for the end and keep you in suspense.
And for everyone maybe just tuning in for the first time, Tanya and I decided to live a month in 3 locations in Tuscany as part of the search for our new home in Italy. Tuscany stole our hearts almost 30 years ago, so we knew this region had to be home. But we didn't know where exactly. We narrowed it down to 3 towns, Pistoia, Montepulciano, and lastly, Castiglion Fiorentino. We also reported out on Pistoia in episode 7 and Montepulciano in episode 10 of our podcast. So this episode will be all about the beautiful hilltop village of Castiglion Fiorentino.
I first have to say, the town's name is a bit of a mouthful. No? I'll do my best to say it correctly again and again throughout this episode. Castiglion Fiorentino is about a 45-minute drive northeast from Montepulciano, so we didn't have too far to go to our next location. It is a small walled city on the eastern edge of Tuscany, between the cities of Arezzo and Cortona, and sits on top of a small hill overlooking the wide expanse of the Val di Chiana Aretina to the southwest and the Val di Chio to the east. It's beautiful and quite steep. We first learned about Castiglion Fiorentino in the fall of 2023. Someone had recommended the city of Arezzo as a great place to live, and then we read on a Facebook group that Castiglion Fiorentino was nearby, so we went to check both out. Arezzo is beautiful, but a little big for us and spread out, with a population of about 96,000 people. Castiglion, on the other hand, is about 13,000 and felt a little more approachable and charming while still having the benefit of being near a large city. So we decided to give it a try. We hadn't spent a lot of time in this area of Tuscany before, so it was a new discovery and we were excited to try it out. Well, Davide, let's tell everyone about it, but how about you provide us with a brief historical overview of Castiglion Fiorentino, and then I'll share some of its key touristic points.
Okay, sure. And as usual, I'm going to paraphrase what I learned, and I'll just make some stuff up, or not. No, I'm not making stuff up. Anyway, let's dive into it. Castiglion Fiorentino was thought to be a medieval town, but during recent excavations, they found remains of an Etruscan city wall underneath the current Piazzale del Cassero from the 4th century BC. And also, they found an Etruscan temple underneath the Church of Sant'Angelo. Then, some documents revealed that in the 10th century, it had the name of Castiglione, and that it was a feudal property of the Marquis of Monte Santa Maria. During that century, then it became a part of the Diocese of Arezzo. In the 12th century, it was a free town until 1289, when in the wake of the Battle of Campaldino, it became part of the Republic of Florence. In later years, Siena and Arezzo reconquered Castiglion Aretino, as it was known at the time, back. Then it went back and forth between the two, until Perugia acquired it from Florence and changed the name to Castiglion Perugino. In 1369, the people revolted against Perugia and gave themselves to the Papal States. By 1384, the Florentines seized the town back and gave it the current name of Castiglion Fiorentino.
So it sounds like everybody wanted it, back and forth.
Yes, they were fighting back then. Anyway, let's keep going. The historic center is typically medieval, with its 13th, 14th century walls, gates, and alleys that climb up to the Cassero, grafted onto the ancient Etruscan ruins. The Cassero is Castiglion Fiorentino's ancient fortress, which was built in the 14th century. While the initial purpose of the fortress was to use it for protecting the town, it was later used for several different purposes. In the 15th century, it was used as a convent. In the 19th century, most of the fortress was already destroyed, and the remaining part of it was used as a prison. From 1800 until 1815, it was occupied by Napoleon, up until the Congress of Vienna, where it was given back to Tuscany, and eventually in 1861 to the newly formed Kingdom of Italy.
Wow, that's quite a history.
Yeah, a little bit. So let me talk about a little bit of the economy here. The main economy of Castiglion Fiorentino is agriculture and cattle breeding. Factories in and around the town are pasta factories, sugar mills, and sausage-making establishments that provide employment to a majority of the inhabitants of the town.
Well, thanks for the historical overview, Davide. Now let's discuss what Castiglion Fiorentino has to offer tourists. And before I go into specifics, I want to highlight that CF, as I'm going to nickname it, is a hidden gem in Tuscany and offers a more authentic experience of a Tuscan hill town, unspoiled by high tourism. Yet, it's large enough to have a high energy and a big social scene, some of it attributable to the student population that is within the city. I also want to point out that the entire valley around the town of CF is beautiful. As you drive in across the lower valley and more modern part of the city, you first notice the impressive hill of the historical old town and are drawn to it. Like, what is that? The town juts out from the flatter landscape, and then two towers dominate the skyline. The Cassero Tower of the 14th century fortress that Davide was talking about, and then the tower of the Church of Saints Michael and Julian. Both of these towers just really articulate the skyline, and it's impressive. We went on many hikes around the neighboring hills, and I think I took a dozen pictures of that skyline. It's just magical and will be imprinted in my head as my main memory of our time there. Once you make the steep climb up to the center, you will encounter the well-preserved medieval wall and two main ornate entrances, the Porta Fiorentina and the Porta Romana. The main street runs between these two entrances and is lined with cafes, restaurants, and shops. And then in the middle of town is the main square, the Piazza del Municipio. Here is the town hall, as well as a 9-arch 16th century loggia that provides an amazing view over the Val di Chio. This was what we first noticed when we visited Castiglion Fiorentino back in 2023. We walked into the piazza, saw the arches, perfectly framing the hills and the gorgeous countryside. So it was a wow factor.
Yeah, I agree.
Then you can continue to spiral up above the town and you reach the fortress, the Cassero, and its impressive tower. It's an archaeological Etruscan site and has a large green space that offers great western views and impressive sunsets. I mean, it's really what the town is known for in many ways, that this whole western view with a flat valley, and it's just quite amazing to sit there and enjoy the sunset. And of course, it wouldn't be a Tuscan village if it didn't have some noteworthy churches to explore. There's the Church of Sant'Angelo, as Davide mentioned, and it's one of the oldest churches in town. It was built around the 13th century at the site of an ancient Etruscan temple. Later on, it was used as a hospital, workshop, and even as a wine cellar. At present, the church has been renovated and is now being used as the municipal art gallery that has a good collection of art pieces from local artists over the centuries. The next church is the Chiesa di San Francesco. It's one of the most important religious places in Castiglion Fiorentino, and it's known mainly for its beautiful architecture. Once you've explored all the key tourist attractions, then it's time to do a little shopping in Castiglion Fiorentino. And the city is known for many small shops selling locally made clothes, jewelry, shoes, and various other things. And there's also a few shops owned by local artisans where you can purchase good handicrafts and artifacts as souvenirs. And a lot of what's local around here are several varieties of sausages, olive oil, freshly made pastas, and local wine brands. And there are plenty of wine shops in the town that sell several varieties of wine. Davide, why don't you tell us a little bit about them?
As usual, every area in Tuscany has its own wine. And in that area, it's known for the DOCG Chianti Colli Aretini, and also for Syrah wine, which we had the opportunity to try. And it was a nice change of the Chianti from the Chianti Classico region. But they're also known for white wines and rosé wines and Vinsanto.
Yeah, I have to say it was a nice change to have some new wines to add to our experience in Tuscany.
Yeah.
Next, a great place to enjoy these wines is at many of Castiglion Fiorentino's cultural events throughout the years. And it has a lot of them that I learned about. First, starting in Easter, that Holy Week offers processions that take place at night throughout the entire week and wind through the streets of town. Then coming up in May, the entire month is dedicated to the exhibition of local gastronomic and handicraft products and agricultural machinery. So that would be a fun time to visit. Then on the third Sunday in June, Castiglion Fiorentino has its own Palio, the Palio dei Rioni. And this is one of those neighborhood competitions like we've talked about the, many towns in the Val d'Orcia. They compete. It's a horse race in the main piazza. And they also have a costume parade where they dress up in historical outfits and have musicians and flag wavers. So it would be another great festival to take part in. Then it turns into July is the film festival in the archaeological area of the Castro. And they have outdoor screenings of the films and meetings. So it sounds like a lot of fun. Then it moves into August. Castiglion Fiorentino comes alive with events where they dress up from the 1950s and 60s during the Vintage Festival. And there's lots of handicrafts and vintage clothing and objects and concerts and etc. And then it finishes out in Christmas with the Living Nativity scene where it's a tradition involving hundreds of extras, men, women, and children of all ages. So it sounds like we left right before all that happened.
Yeah, we missed it because we left December 16th?
We did.
Yes.
So too bad. And a lot of fun events throughout the year. So we're going to have to go back and take part in it since we missed out and were there during the quiet month of November and December.
Well, Tanya, now that we covered the hidden gem of Castiglion Fiorentino, we need to point out its more famous neighbors, the towns of Arezzo and Cortona.
Yep. And, I mentioned this, that Castiglion Fiorentino is pretty close to both towns of Arezzo and Cortona. So it's a great day trip to make. Arezzo is a place for art lovers and shopping fans. It has a beautiful medieval square. And it was, a star of the Oscar-winning film Life is Beautiful.
Buongiorno, principessa!
I laugh every time you say that. And, Arezzo is a little bit off the main path, tourist trail in Italy, but it has a lot to offer. It's also a center of Etruscan origin, and it's about an hour southeast of Florence, and it's an easy day trip if you're based in Florence as well. You can see all of the major sites in one day. As I mentioned, the Piazza Grande is a wonderful place to tour around and relax. They have lots of restaurants. to have lunch at and crowds that, fill the squares. It has a famous loggia, which once hosted artisan stalls, now is home to trattorias and coffee shops. And on the first weekend of every month, Piazza Grande becomes the grand setting for the most popular antique fair in Tuscany.
Mm-hmm.
The local cuisine with fresh products from the nearby Val di Chiana and Casentino Valley has a following of its own. So there's a lot to see and do in Arezzo. It's known for a lot of concerts and events. So a fun city.
I mean, we visited Arezzo 2 or 3 times now, and while it's a large city, it is a charming historical center. And we recently went to see its Christmas market there. And we were very impressed. It was a large-scale production and way better than Florence, to be honest.
Yeah, I was actually surprised by that. I think we were anticipating Florence. I mean, it's such a large city that it would have to have an amazing Christmas market, but it was a little bit of a letdown in comparison. So I'm so glad we went to Arezzo and the entire city was decorated and it was large scale, lights everywhere, lots of booths and a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we actually, a friend from the United States came to visit, Andrea, and I told him to go there because they had this nice Babbo Natale exhibition in the fortress, which we didn't go in because it was for kids. So, but
you didn't want to sit on Babbo Natale's lap?
No. All right. Well, how about Cortona?
Well, Cortona is also nearby, actually about 5 minutes from Castiglion Fiorentino. And, you guys might know of it because of its fame and Under the Tuscan Sun. And we also couldn't help but fall in love with it then. I mean, to be honest, it's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
It's just very endearing to me and speaks about what I love about Tuscany. And, it's a fun story as well. And despite all of that fame, Cortona has surprisingly preserved a lot of its authenticity, and it's a fun town to visit. It's perched on the side of a hill, and it has a large basilica of Santa Margherita on the side of it. So a little bit similar to Montepulciano, where it sits there just as you're entering the town and outside the city's Etruscan walls. It's a town full of narrow, shop-laden streets and hidden stone staircases. And our last visit, we actually walked through many more of those than we have in the past because I wanted to check them all out. And it's cute and also has, a great sunset view offering from the town. The main square is the Piazza della Repubblica, and it's dominated by the Palazzo Comunale and a very large staircase. You might remember it from Under the Tuscan Sun.
Yes.
Where they're sitting there at Christmas. And it is the liveliest spot in town with tourists and locals enjoying the outdoor cafes. And during the scene in the movie, they have the market where she's sampling the grapes and says it even tastes like purple. I remember that because I remember exactly where she was sitting in the piazza. And when we walked by it, I'm like, that's where she was sitting, eating the grapes. But behind the piazza, there is now the Etruscan Academy Museum dedicated to Roman and Etruscan finds and other interesting artifacts from the periods, including some Renaissance paintings. So, we are not as big into museums, but I think this would be probably a good one to check out from an Etruscan standpoint.
Yeah, so we wandered Cortona streets and happened to get to some magnificent spots to see all those gorgeous views to Lago Trasimeno and the valley and the neighboring Castiglion Fiorentino. So it was so beautiful.
It is beautiful, and I fall in love with it a little bit more each time we visit. And I have to say, one of my favorite memories now that I'm going to take with me for I don't know how many years, but because we were there at Christmas, we happened to be there the night of their children's holiday concert in the main piazza. And I mean, hundreds, maybe 100 of little kids on the that big staircase.
Yeah.
And, just getting them organized, like herding cats, was just cute to see.
And it was a process for sure.
It was. And it was just fun to watch. And all of the, parents and family are there to watch. And I just felt like we were really part of the community for a minute. And when they finally got organized and singing, they were so cute. And it was just such a moment. Like I teared up. It was just an emotional moment of being able to be a part of that. And So now I just feel like I experienced a little bit of Cortona as a local and love it. And, it's a charming town, but it's also a good location because it borders the region of Umbria. And, Davide mentioned Lago di Trasimeno. I mean, it's a large lake. And I only, I guess, remembered that it was there 2 or 3 years ago when we visited. And it's a great place for day trips because there's a lot of little lakeside villages. You can take a ferry to the island.
Yeah.
It has a lot to offer where it's quite a distance from like each coast.
It kind of reminds me
Italy.
of Lake Minnetonka.
Yeah, and
a little bit.
It is.
Wayzata.
It's a large lake, and one of the villages reminded us of Wayzata. And we're like, wow, who knew this was in the middle of Italy, right almost on the border of Tuscany and Umbria. So if you're looking for some lakeside aspects of your travels, incorporate Lago di Trasimeno.
Yeah, so that was Cortona and Arezzo. And now we covered a lot about Castiglion Fiorentino as a tourist destination. Let's shift to talking about our experience living there.
Well, I first just have to say that I really enjoyed our time in Castiglion Fiorentino. I wasn't sure what to expect. I mean, it was charming, but it's one thing to visit and another thing to live there. But it really was a fun town with a robust social scene and a lot of energy. And what was surprising is that it was evident, even though we were there from mid-November to mid-December, likely one of the slowest periods for the town. So maybe it wasn't great planning on our part to pick that month to try out Castiglion Fiorentino, but I could only imagine what it would have been like to be there during the busy summer months and all of those festivals that I talked about and the events. So I want to make sure to check it out.
Yeah, I mean, it was hopping, and partly also because they have a college there. And so Friday, Saturday, the young people were, wandering the streets of the Centro Storico. And yeah, I mean, it was really cool.
It was. And, our apartment was right in the middle of the historic center. And that was really, of all of our locations, the only time we were really in the heart of the Centro.
Yes, it had its pros and cons. Moving in and moving out was not necessarily a pleasant thing to do. But anyway,
having your front door on the main street.
Yeah, but I wanted to say this. The town had a lot of great restaurants and bars. I mean, Da Mozzicone, great steaks there.
Oh my gosh, it was so good.
And Il Gallo Nero, which we actually, in 2023, we ate there.
Yep.
And then we went back and we had pizza there and pasta.
Well, and actually they had this cheese fondue.
Oh yeah, the melted. Yeah,
I don't think I've seen that in Tuscany before. So maybe it was just winter, or if it's known for that area to have this little cheese fondue pot and
pecorino cheese and honey, or
I don't remember honey, but it was just a fun little mini fondue. And having spent our time in Switzerland, we have a fondness. Fondue,
which we probably should make a fondue soon here. So,
but of the area, I mean, the city itself was great, but we also love the surrounding nature and the hikes that we went on in the hills. And so, just as you're walking out of the town center in the main hill, there's neighboring hills that you can go on and climb up, and I mean, it got your heart pumping and good exercise, but. There were lots of olive groves that we walked by as they were harvesting and some vineyards. But overall, I mean, it was a little bit more woodsy versus, the rolling plains that we talked about for the Val d'Orcia. What I also liked about the location was that the lower valley had a lot of larger stores and modern conveniences. So it had the charm of a hill town as well as the perks of a larger town. And it was the first time we were introduced to what they call the Chinese store. And we're like, what?
Yes.
The Chinese, you mean a Chinese restaurant? I'm like, no, the Chinese store. And we're like, well, what's a Chinese store?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, it sells everything that comes from China.
Yeah. So not necessarily owned by the Chinese people. So
no. And so we're like, oh, I haven't heard of this. And now actually in other places we've been to, people do refer to it as that's the Chinese store.
Where can I find the Chinese store?
And so, we don't have Walmart and Targets here. You have a Chinese store to get really all those same products. Anyway, that was a little fun. And what else we liked about Castiglion?
The train station.
Train station. And, it was a pretty short walk from the center. I mean, and going downhill was easy. It
Yes,
was about a mile.
going up, not so much.
When you came back, especially if you had a suitcase. But it was still doable, and it was easy to get to Florence and Arezzo, Cortona, Orvieto. So definitely a perk of living in a city with a train station. The locals were super friendly.
Mm.
And, it was interesting. Like, they all were quick to point out that they have a high quality of life and it's the best place to live. Though I have to say, everywhere we went, they said it was the best place to live.
That's true.
Which is normal, right?
They were also, everywhere we went, they were super friendly.
Yes.
Warm, welcoming.
Yes. And maybe a little bit surprisingly, but maybe not, is that they have a bit of an expat community. And we met a few of these people while we were living there and hung out with them and had a drink. And they really love living there. And it was interesting. We went to one of their homes, the tour, and we got a little bit lost because it was down in the valley, Val di Chio. And we stopped by this one location, this house, and asked, directions. And they're like, oh, over there is a bunch of Americans.
Yes.
So we're like, oh, okay, we're going to go see them. How about any downsides that we learned of living there? And to be honest, like, nothing really stood out as a negative. I think the main decision to live in a town like Castiglion Fiorentino would be similar to what we talked about when we talked about Montepulciano, is needing to decide what is more appealing to you, the country or the city. And so I do have to say maybe Castiglion Fiorentino offers a little bit more of both, because Arezzo and Florence are pretty close. So you get to live in the country, but be close to the big cities.
Yeah.
I do think, the one downside is I had to think about it. Like, was there anything that we thought annoyed us? And it seemed like whenever we would drive to get to the highway, it took a while, or it just felt like it took a while, because it was 20 minutes north to Arezzo, and also even going south was about 35 minutes before you hit the highway. And it was a lot of these windy country roads that you're like, are we ever going to get
And
to
the roads were in a terrible shape, as I remember. Driving through Val di Chiana to reach Autostrada A1, it was just terrible. The roads were in a terrible shape. So that's why it's kind of like, if I have to do this every day, it's kind of like,
Yeah, that was maybe the one downside. And location-wise, it's in a perfect location, but it seemed a little bit difficult to get out by car. Train was a little bit easier.
Well, so now it's time for our update. Are you ready, Tanya?
I think so.
So what have we been doing since Castiglion Fiorentino?
Well, we've been doing a lot. First, we spent a month in Poggibonsi, so between mid-December to mid-January. And yes, I said it correctly, Poggibonsi.
Poggibonsi.
It's kind of just a funny name. Like, even the locals laugh about it because it's just sort of unique. But it's strategically located between Florence and Siena and has a train station that's easy to get to. So we thought it was a great place to have our family, visit for the holidays, so people could be a little bit independent and take the train or the bus to neighboring locations. And, we did quite a bit of traveling with them. Like, we went to Florence, we spent a day in Siena, San Gimignano an afternoon. We went to the city of Lucca with our son, Luca, and Bologna, and, had some great food there. We spent a day in Rome. So it was really fun to see all of the towns decorated for the holidays, but we were busy. And then you went to the US for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I went back to Minneapolis for a work project I had, and also to a short trip to LA also for work. And I just experienced cold weather again. It was freezing, minus 20 Celsius.
So I had to ask him, are you missing Italy yet, or you want to go back to the US?
It was just crazy because I rented a car and the car was outside. And in the morning, it took me 5 minutes to heat up the car, to scrape the windshields. And it was just crazy. So I was glad to leave and go to LA because it was way warmer in LA.
Well, while you were warming up in LA, I moved yet again to Siena.
Yes.
And I have to say, I continue to love the city of Siena. It will always be one of my favorite places. And I got to go on many walks, the fortress there, the main piazza, and I climbed the Fattatone, which is next to the Duomo, and had amazing views. So I got to do some new things. I was on my own. I actually went to Mass at the Duomo, and that was an experience.
I was really surprised that you went.
It was beautiful. Like I really enjoyed that. So I was in Siena for almost 3 weeks, and then you came back and we moved to our final destination, not once, but twice. So maybe now you can all understand why we needed a little bit of an extended break. And I think it turned into a little bit more of a break than we were thinking it would, but it's been a little crazy busy.
Yeah, we wanted to come back like 2 weeks ago with this podcast, but life happened. So anyway, I'm sure everyone wants to know, where did we choose to live? We chose Montepulciano. Ta-da!
We're here. I'm so happy with our choice, but I have to say, quite honestly, I think we could be happy in all 3 of our trial locations. But there's just something about the Val d'Orcia that is extra special to us, and it just feels like home. And every time we leave and come back, we're like, gosh, this just feels like where we're supposed to be.
I mean, I could have lived in any of the 3 towns. I mean, it offered its pros and cons, each town. But every time we went out of the Val d'Orcia, I said, but it's not the Val d'Orcia. So it made us easier for us to nail it down to, okay, we need to live somewhere in the Val d'Orcia and somewhere not too far from the main motorway, the autostrada. And so Montepulciano was the choice, yeah. So
we love it. And I think what we learned about ourselves, and we knew this, but you don't know it until you're given options of that being by nature was very key to us. And not just any nature, but the landscape of the Val d'Orcia is unique and special. And it's what captured our hearts more than 20 years ago. And, I think you could probably remember in the episode about the Val d'Orcia, how I would go wax on about the hills and the cypress trees. And, it's even in my company logo. They just have special meaning to me and are magical.
Yeah. And so Tanya and I have been going on walks, not on a daily basis, but 2 or 3 times a week. We go on walks. Pistoia on walks. It was in the city, in Castiglion Fiorentino, the steep hills, but not as spectacular as the walks here in Montepulciano. Because, I mean, walking in the nature, walking through these vineyards, these rolling hills, it was just magical.
So, Castiglion Fiorentino was a strong second, I have to say, because of all of the nature, but it's a flatter valley around the main centro. And, the hills were more steep and woodsy versus there weren't really those soft rolling plains with cypress trees and vineyards. So while awesome, it just didn't quite compare.
Mm-hmm.
And, then I have to say the area around Pistoia was a bit similar to Castiglion Fiorentino in that it has a lot of the, mountains and they're woodsy. And when I say woodsy, it's like forests. And so they're more dense. It's not the casual, trees here and there and cypress trees that kind of pop up around the Val d'Orcia. And while we didn't have mountains in Minnesota, so any kind of mountains is like a bonus for us. We love it. But we did have a lot of forests in northern Minnesota. So we thought we kind of had that woodsy experience in our lives and something about the Val d'Orcia, and it's just a different type of nature. That's
because
beautiful.
The Val d'Orcia, when you see the hills, you can see fields of vineyard or olive grove or a little bit of forest. And
but even just wheat and
wheat, it's so mixed. It's I'm looking forward for spring to see that. So
me too. And I think when it comes down to it, like we love wine country And it is such a key part of Montepulciano and the Val d'Orcia. I mean, as we mentioned, all of Tuscany has wine, but it's really part of its main core in this area that it's known for its wine, and it's our vibe and our passion. I think another thing we noticed when we were, comparing the locations against each other is that Pistoia was the most convenient of the three from a travel standpoint.
Yeah.
Great location. You can get to Florence quick. You can get to the coast quick.
Yeah.
Trains went everywhere. But we found ourselves saying, well, we could go here and we could go there and we could go here. And I'm like, why do we just have to go?
Let's live there,
I want to be, at home in my home and enjoy being there and not feeling like we need to go somewhere else to be amongst nature. So that became important to us. What else do we love about Montepulciano? And I have to say, it's just been so lovely here, the people, and they're so welcoming. And, I suspect a little bit that because it is a more touristy town, they are used to tourists. And I think that makes them a little bit more open and accepting of newcomers, that we're not as strange as we could be in some other places. But they're just inviting us to everything. I mean, we've been invited to a couple of wine events and Davide.
Yeah. And unknowingly, I was sitting next to the mayor. He introduced himself as Michele, piacere Davide. And then I was told, you're sitting next to the mayor, and said,
are you serious?
Oh, I'm so honored,
So it was our second night in officially living here. And we met the mayor, and I was sitting next to an owner of, quite a large winery.
Mm.
And we're like, who does this on their first weekend in a new town? And, it became clear too in talking with everybody, before when we were here for a month and now just recently, that the people here have a real passion for what they do. I mean, it's touristy yet, but it's still authentic because people are in it for the right reasons. They want to share their passion with others. And it really extends to everyone. Like, our realtors have been so friendly. It's incredible.
Which is a very, we met a lot of realtors while we are, since September. And the ones that we found in Pienza and now also in Montepulciano, they have been stellar.
And we had to kind of point out for others, maybe going through this experience, we were first told, or actually we would walk into the realtor offices and say, we're looking to rent something. And they're like, we don't really do rentals.
We don't do rentals. They want to deal with it. And the main reason is because to rent in Italy has been really difficult to do because everybody is doing the short-term rentals. And we were looking for a 12-month or, even longer.
Yep. So they would first say, no, we just kind of do property sales. And we're like, well, just humor us. Let's listen to what we're looking for. And, not surprisingly, it was through these realtors that kind of odd situations arose where we're like, well, actually, I think we have somebody who might want to rent for a while. So I'm glad we were adamant about talking to realtors and being persistent for them to hear us out, because that was ultimately how we found a place.
Yeah. Last time we recorded an episode, we were supposed to move into an apartment in Pienza. And
I guess it was good that we didn't say we were going to.
Yes. I was telling you, let's wait until we
actually sign
the contract, which the apartment in Pienza was beautiful as well, but it was a more difficult situation for us. So it fell through.
It fell through.
And luckily...
And then Montepulciano became available, and it just seems like it was where we were supposed to be. And it's a great location. And we've only been here for a few days, technically, in our apartment.
Yeah.
And we're happy that we found a 2-bedroom, and I'll have an official office. And I won't have to do travel planning sitting in the kitchen.
You're sitting on my desk right now.
Well, until I get a desk, step by step.
But we moved our stuff from Calabria.
Finally, it's been sitting in your parents' basement for the last 3 months.
Yeah, since November.
And we love being reunited with our things, especially our bed. I mean, we've had 3 full nights in our bed, and I've never slept so well. So, I don't regret for a second having shipped our belongings from the US. Like there's always a debate, if you'll see on any of the Facebook groups with expats who've moved here, and those who are like, don't bring anything, and others bring everything. And I think we brought the right things. But it's made the place feel like home. Like I've been missing feeling like we have a home.
Exactly. I agree with that.
But let's just say, we're here. We're excited about our choice. I think we feel like we have made we're confident in our decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really looking forward to what lies ahead and getting to know the community. And staying put will be awesome for a little bit, and being able to focus on creating a routine and a bit more like work and relaxation and
biking.
And, our adventure was fun. It was really once in a lifetime opportunity to do what we did, but it's time to bring it to an end and slow down and really figure out la dolce vita.
I agree with you, Tanya. Well, now we're at the end of this episode. And before we conclude this, as usual, Tanya, do you got some tips for us? Tips from Tanya.
Yes, I do. And so thanks, Davide. This episode, my tips are going to relate to both visiting as well as moving to Italy. And first, I want to start off with is that if you're wanting a more authentic experience, I do encourage you to go off the beaten path a little bit. And we've been reminded of that through our months here. So many towns that are near the more popular ones are easy to work into an itinerary. And so we've talked about like the town of Orvieto, Montechiello is near Pienza, Radicofani is a town in southern Val d'Orcia, Lucignano, Monte San Savino, to name but a few. Like these are really charming towns that we stumbled upon as we're looking around, and they could have been contenders for us to live.
Yeah, especially Monte San Savino. We went there. They had a market going, and it was awesome. And we also top hill town, and it's just on the opposite side of Castiglion Fiorentino. It's on the other side. So
the valley.
Yeah.
No, they're lovely. And so I would just, want to work some of those in if people have time in their schedule. And, secondly, from a tourist standpoint, I mentioned I've been speaking with more and more guides and locals and learning more what the word authentic really means. And it's simple. It's things that are real versus created for tourists. And, the real experiences provided by locals that love what they do and love sharing it with others versus being primarily motivated by money. And, I've always suspected this, but more and more I'm learning that the places most highly touted on social media are not because they are great. It's because they have big marketing budgets.
Yes.
And, I've been told twice now by different guides that, even truffle hunting as an activity was created for tourists. Like this is not something locals do. And at first it was like, felt bad that we hadn't done this in like the 20 some years that we've been here. And I'm like, now I know why. It's because it just wasn't a thing until somebody thought it would be a good tourist activity. And we learned, some actually go so far as to plant the truffles prior to the tours. So it just makes you scratch your head and go, gosh, there are people out there who are not really in this for the right reason. So, be leery of big advertising.
Yeah. And hire people like you who know the good ones, right, Tanya?
Yes. And again, through experience, we've learned, who's authentic, who's in it for the right reasons. And, I love being able to share that with others.
That's why we are here.
So my third tip for for this episode, as it relates to moving here and determining where to live, like what advice do we have to take away from all of that? And as difficult and tiring as it was to move around as many times as we did, I don't know that we would have done it any differently. It was important to try them all out. It really taught us what we were looking for, some things we knew, some things we didn't know really about ourselves. So, maybe the one thing I would change would be to stay a little bit longer in each location because we had so much going on that it seemed like we would just get settled and adjusted and we were picking up and moving to the next location. So we didn't have time just to explore the town we were in, but had to take care of some logistical things with moving here.
It didn't help that we had to go to Calabria so many times to take care of bureaucracy or buying a car
or our move.
Yeah, I mean, it's just maybe people that are coming here directly and get their stuff here directly are better off. But this was our experience. Another thing that I think that was very difficult for me was to sleep in someone else's bed for 6 months. So I'm so glad we have our bed here now. So I'm so happy.
But I do encourage, if you're going to move to a new location, you do have to try it out. And I don't think we could have made our decision and feel as confident about it if we had just spent a week or so.
Yeah.
And taken that leap. So that was important.
All right. Well, Tanya, thank you again for your tips. And thank you guys for listening and helping to kick off our second season.
Yes. We really hope you've enjoyed learning about our third location and living experiment in Tuscany. And, you've really been on the full journey with us now. And now we get to start a new journey of living here and continuing to explore. And, it's really fun to be able to share it with others who want to visit or maybe even live here yourselves someday. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with a new topic.
Let's see. All right. Thank you.
Ciao, everyone. We hope you've enjoyed Experience Italy with Friends. If you like the podcast, remember to follow us and leave a review letting us know what you found to be the most helpful. And if you want expert advice or assistance in creating your own immersive and authentic experience in Italy, visit us at www.amicivacations.com.